Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Tambrey Laine, and joining me today is Pasco County Supervisor of Elections, Brian Corley. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So when it comes to elections, we have a lot to talk about, and I'm sure the number one question you get is about security. So let's talk about that a little. How secure is the election process in Pasco County?
Beyond secure. As you might imagine, that has become literally the number one question I get. And there are myriads of checks and balances in place. And Florida has really been leading the nation when it comes to securing the vote, if you will. Obviously, the 2016 election cycle, with concerns of meddling from other countries and whatnot, the threat certainly is real. It's evolving. We have partnered with the state and our federal partners, to include the Department of Homeland Security. DHS has been wonderful in providing a myriad of sources. So there are so many checks and balances in place that I'm very confident. Obviously can't go into it for obvious security reasons, but we have done a lot, and the state's been very helpful in helping us acquire federal funds to shore up and fortify our election system. We like to think of it as a moat, if you will, and our moat is in good shape.
So one of the things I found interesting when we were talking about this is, in a lot of areas, we're embracing technology, and I know that's true in your office to some extent, but when it comes to the election process, in some ways we've gone back to the basics with the paper ballots. Can you talk about that and explain how important that is?
Sure. Yeah, it's ironic in that we've moved forward with, for example, registering to vote online. You can register to vote, obviously can't vote online. If you look back at Florida, we had the punch cards with the infamous 2000 election, the hanging chads, et cetera. Then we went to touchscreens, and the problem with touchscreens where there was no paper trail. And one of the most important safeguards that we have, in fact, it was 2008 that Florida went back to paper ballots, is we have ballots, and this is just an example right here, but you can't hack paper. The worst case is we could recreate the election. So some states that are fully touchscreen still don't have what's known as a paper trail. So Florida having that paper ballot is really, really a godsend, and has helped us again, make sure that our elections are secure.
Yeah, so when you go to the polls, it might seem a little old school, but it's really helping secure your vote.
Yeah, if you can fill in some bubbles, you'll be good to go.
Another thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to security, you've heard cases of voters getting suspicious emails, letters in the mail, maybe being asked to visit some questionable websites. What should voters do if they have any question about any of those communications?
Great question, Tambrey. The answer is very simple. When in doubt, contact our office. They can go to our website, but even call us, our 800 number, 800-851-8754. Ask us. Say, I got something in the mail, I got this email, and let us verify if it came from us. Very shortly, we're going to be sending out sample ballots to pretty much every voter in the county. It has our seal on it. We're mailing out our vote by mail ballots right now for the primary, and we'll do so again for the general. But we get phishing emails, all of us, right? I use the analogy that apparently I'm supposed to get like $30 million from someone in Nigeria if I'll simply just give my banking information.
Of course you are.
So we're not exempt from that either as an elections office. But if voters get anything they're unsure of, a lot of times there's the third-party groups out there notifying them, and sometimes they send pre-filled voter registration forms, for example. We've had issues where these groups have sent them to voters who are already registered. They've sent them to minors, like 9-year-old, pets. Last time I checked, minors and pets cannot vote. And sadly, we have voters who contact us whose loved ones have passed away, and they're still getting forms for them. So when in doubt, contact us and let us verify that if it's from us, or at least if it's legitimate or not.
And I like your point about the official seal. And then the flip side of that is, if your staff, who's great, by the way, in helping answer these questions, if they weren't aware of something, then this could also bring that to their attention as well.
That's a fantastic point, yep.
Okay, so let's get down to talking about voting.
Okay.
Because it's easier than ever. There are 3 ways to vote. So vote by mail, talk about that. That's becoming really popular.
Yes, formerly known as absentee voting. Florida has really become one of the most innovative states with regards to access to voting. Some states, my birth state of New York, not picking on New York, but my birth state only has literally one style of voting. It's election day. There's no early voting, and there's limited absentee voting, and you have to have an affidavit to say why you can't be in the polls on election day. Contrasted with Florida, which, let us not forget rather, is the largest battleground state, the 3rd most populous state in the nation, and it's always, the elections are close. But so, with that said, every vote does make a difference. So there are options. Vote by mail has become increasingly popular each time. it works like this. You request it from us, we send it to you, you make the decisions from your coffee table, you send it back to us, you can mail it, you can drop it off at our office, you can drop it off at one of our early voting sites, and it does get tabulated, and of course, and then secondly, we have what's called early voting. Early voting is also come back strong, and it kind of become a little stagnant, but it came back heavily in 2016. We expect that to continue. Early voting is where we have now 11 locations. We've added 3 all around the county, and it offers weekend hours, evening hours. So you can vote after church on a Sunday. You can come after work or before work, and it's a great convenience tool. And then, of course, we have the traditional election day, your neighborhood polling place. Go to the polls, yes. Your traditional neighborhood polling place. So that's on election day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So there's no excuse to not vote. The options are it's just too easy.
Yeah, it's convenient. And you talked about the sample ballot before, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've said in the past, go ahead and fill out your sample ballot and bring it to the polls.
Highly encouraged. Yeah, not only it's an option, it's highly encouraged. Particularly with not only in any election, mind you, it helps speed up the process for, quite frankly, for the most important stakeholder, the voter. Because you've done your research, you know who you want to vote for. You can simply transpose from your sample ballot onto the real ballot we provide. And that becomes very, very important with a very, very busy election. For example, a general election that we're coming up here in November is going to have 17 different referendum questions on there. It's going to be a lengthy ballot. So if you can do your homework and research ahead of time, make your decisions, that will speed up the process for you and your fellow voters as well.
Then it's really just a matter of coming in, filling out your chosen candidates and issues and heading out.
And then getting your highly coveted I voted sticker as well.
That's right.
Very important.
Very important. All right, next thing I want to talk about is dispelling some urban legends or myths, because there are quite a few out there.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I know that's important to you to talk about those. So, number 1, jury duty is tied to voter registration.
False. It is, true in the sense of it's an urban legend. So every week, Dr. O'Neill invited me some years ago to speak to the jury pool, and it's been a great opportunity. I believe over 40,000 people annually go through the jury pool system in Pasco. And one of the first things I always ask voters and challenge them is, some in this room, in the jury room, you didn't register to vote because you thought it might get you called for jury duty. It has been, it was that way until about 15 years ago. Now it's because you have a driver's license. So what I always tell jurors, if that's been what's the impediment to registering to vote, let's go ahead and get that out of the way now. So if that was your issue, please, 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 please register to vote, because it's simply not true.
All right, so second urban legend, university students can't vote from campus.
Yep, that is also an urban legend. I had a young man just the other day reach out to me and inquire about changing his address, and he indicated a particular university. And so I relayed to him, you could certainly keep your voting address here because you're away at school temporarily, and we can send your vote by mail ballot directly to your dorm room or apartment. And he wrote back, I didn't know I could do that. It's fantastic. So yes, if you're away at a college university, we'll send the vote by mail ballot to you. Also in the military as well. I use my daughter's example. My daughter right now is in Navy boot camp. When she graduates, Sarah Corley will have her vote by mail ballot sent somewhere. Don't know where she's going to be stationed, but wherever she's stationed, we can send it to the far corners of the earth, so make sure our men and women in the military are able to exercise the right to vote as well.
Which brings us right to the next one. When we talk about vote by mail and mailed in ballots, some people out there think that if you mail in your ballot that it might not count or that it's not counted.
Yes, that's also obviously an urban legend. Technically, we like to use the phrase tabulated. The votes are tabulated really first, to be honest with you. We convene what's called the canvassing board, which is a county judge, myself, and a rotating county commissioner that kind of oversees the election, even though my staff and my team and I run it. But yeah, we actually do those generally 6 days before the election. So we tabulate those. We bring in bipartisan teams, and once we verify, when the ballot comes back, that it's the voter. Of course, the signature is very, very important, and a quick plug for updating your signature as a voter. Some people have registered in the 70s. Your signature changes as you get older and have medical conditions, so it's important. And if there's a variance, we'll certainly get with the voter and help them out. But we have these teams, and what they do is they separate what's in the envelope from the ballot, because it's a secret ballot. We don't know how you voted clearly. And those get run through high-speed tabulators, and the votes are suppressed. We don't see the results. My team and I, until 7 p.m. when the polls close, like everybody else. That's another urban legend.
Right.
We don't know the winners and losers until after the polls close. But every one of those, that are eligible are tabulated.
Tabulated.
Yep.
That's
Yes,
right. So the last one that we want to talk about is if you show up to a polling place on election day without your ID, then you can't vote.
The compliments of the Help America Vote Act of 2002, there's a wonderful provision called the provisional ballot, which is the ultimate safety valve. So if you show up, you forgot your ID, happens every election, or your eligibility can't be determined, you have the right to kind of legally contest what our records say. If our records say that you've not been a voter in this county, or if you're a convicted felon, or for whatever reason you're ineligible to vote per the law, you have a right to do that provisional ballot. And it doesn't get put in the machine to be tabulated, obviously. It gets put in a sealed envelope, comes back, and my staff does the research, and then in a public setting, we make recommendations to the canvassing board or whether that should be tabulated or not, and they make that decision. And we've had elections where provisional ballots can make a difference, can literally make a difference on a contest of who wins and who doesn't win. So it's very, very important.
Yeah, and it all kind of comes full circle to security.
Exactly.
Securing all of these votes and making sure they're all tabulated correctly. And
yeah, and one quick point on, if I may, is the wonderful safety valve, as I mentioned, is if there was any sort of issue. We've worked tirelessly with our partners in the County Emergency Operations Management Team, as well as the Sheriff's Office for cybersecurity, physical security, et cetera. If somebody were to show up, and that's been one of the concerns with we've read about nationally, is these foreign actors kind of meddling into voter databases. Worst case scenario is if somebody shows up and there was some sort of issue with their voter registration record by no fault of their own, a voter is never turned away. So they will have the opportunity to vote that ballot, and I assure somebody, we will find the voter, and if it's applicable, that vote will be tabulated. Guaranteed. 100% guaranteed.
Good to know. All right. There's so much information out there, and I think probably by far the best resource for accurate, up-to-date information is your website, pascovotes.com. So tell us some of the things that we can learn on the website just by visiting it.
Pretty much everything you want to know. So if you want to register to vote, we can direct you to now the online voter registration portal. If you have questions about, you want to change your political party, for example, what does book closing mean? The last date to register to vote or change your party. Do you want to see the candidates? We have a list of all the candidates there. You want to know where early voting locations are. You want to know what the wait time is for early voting, so you can make a conscious choice about, maybe I was going to go over to New River Library, but Alice Hall in Zephyr Hills has a considerably less waiting time. So it's about making informed decisions and empowering voters, if you will. Everything from even, one of the things we're obviously big on as well, we should, is transparency. If you go on our website, you're going to see, once we send our ballots out for military and overseas voters and we get them back, we start posting on our website turnout updates every 10 minutes, of course. It really means each day for vote by mail period. But then when early voting starts, every 10 minutes you will see by precinct and by party the voter turnout. So the media, the candidates, the general public can track it. So there's a little bit, and of course, let's not forget, on election day at 7 p.m., the results. And remember this, they're unofficial. That's very, very important that the voters understand that. So what they're going to see at 7 o'clock, right when the polls close, we post our early voting totals and our vote by mail totals. But it's not over then, because we still have, by law, you can drop off your ballot to any one of our 3 offices, Newport, Richie, Atlantic Lakes, or Dade City, up until 7 p.m. So even though we're based out of Dade City, it takes time to get those ballots over to Dade City. So on a major election, sometimes we've had several thousand that we still have to tabulate. So in a close race, I tell candidates, you may want to call me first before you break open the champagne or cry, if you will. But again, we also have the provisional ballots. So it's not, they're unofficial for a reason.
And all that information's on your website.
Yes, ma'am.
And the other cool thing is that you guys redesigned your website earlier this year and relaunched it, and it's now adaptive, which makes it super convenient. So you can see the same things on your mobile phone, on your tablet, whatever you might be using. Why was that important to you?
Just emerging technologies. It's ironic how things have come full circle, because originally my team had designed the website in-house many years ago, literally built it themselves, and it was their baby. But they realized that there were some things on, some tools and bells and whistles they could no longer create, if you will, in-house. So we had to kind of, like, as much as it pained us to say is no longer ours that we did, we realized that voters want to be able to access from their smartphone, you're right, from their tablet, and be able to see the same information, because the old days it was not the same looking at, and some to this day some websites still have that, but it's important that they be able to get, we want them to get the information they need and get it promptly.
Yeah, and the county's just made that switch too to an adaptive website, and it makes a huge difference when you're looking for information
I've noticed
on your
that.
phone.
I've used it myself as a citizen.
A lot easier to find. So speaking of convenience and a little bit of fun sprinkled in, the Pasco County Supervisor of Elections is big on social media. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because I've seen examples of your newsletters and even sample ballots. And how are you using that to reach voters?
We try to use some information, some motivation. I know just today we put out on our Twitter, our Facebook, and Instagram a Monday motivation, and it had to do with a quote by the Polish Nobel Prize winner Lech Walesa that talked about he had read the Bill of Rights 100 times and wondering how Americans realize how blessed they are to live in the greatest country, if you will. And so trying to motivate, we use it to motivate people. We put information out there about how sample ballots will be sent to each voter, so it alerts them that things are coming from us. And it's a great tool to reach voters, and we've gotten some decent accolades, and we're pretty proud of it.
That's awesome. And I love the main hashtag you've been using is #BeElectionReady. So talk a little bit more about that.
So one of the things when I'm out talking to voters, I realize that they're not always prepared, because, and so if somebody were to move, say within Pasco or into Pasco, clearly you remember to notify the cable company, the utility company, but if it's in between election cycles, you may not think to notify the elections office, whether it be in another state or even within Pasco. So what I tell voters, be election ready means have your address up to date, make sure your signature is current, make sure you do your research, study your sample ballot, bring it with you, and it kind of ties into our secondary phrase we use is #MyRightMyVote. We want people to realize they have that right because we have a program called Vote Not of a Veteran, and we want people to realize that it's the sacrifices that our men and women who wore and wear the uniform made that gives them the right to have that vote.
Absolutely.
So be election ready, and My Right, My Vote hopefully motivates people to be prepared, if you will.
I like that. So how to prepare, and then you can share it on social media and encourage all of your friends and family to do the same thing. All right. Well, final thoughts, because anyone who's heard you speak recently has heard you say civility is not a dirty word, and I know you wanted to talk about that.
Yes, that's become a real issue. We saw very, very energized voters, passionate voters during the 2016 election cycle. Passionate voters, engaged, energized, that's fantastic. Our founding fathers envisioned that. It's okay to have debates and some dissent, but we're seeing it tilt to a little bit towards anger. And it seems like as Americans, we seem to be talking through each other and not to each other. And that's kind of sad. And I use the example, there's people I know who were friends, some are even relatives, and supported different candidates, and over some Facebook post, unfriended, stopped talking. These are blood relatives and friends, and that's sad. So we need to return to civility. It's okay, again, to have, what I tell voters, have those disagreements. I grew up in a household where it wasn't uncommon to be debating things, the news of the day, around the dinner table.
Sure.
We all didn't agree, and that's okay, but you didn't hold grudges over it.
Right.
And so, a lot of that, what can be, you spoke of a very powerful tool with social media, how true that is, but some people have taken door number 2 to use it towards spewing some anger, and that's kind of sad to me. Somebody said that, social media, some people use it and it's become a bathroom wall with like spell check, if you will, and sometimes not even then.
Sometimes not even then,
exactly.
right?
But so I want voters to do the research on the candidates, be opinionated, have your voice heard. But the great thing about it is you get to repeat every 2 years. There's elections, either midterms or presidential elections, every 2 years. So if you're happy who won, great. Come out and do it again, and you can maybe be happy. If you're not so happy, that's fine, but we're all Americans. We're all in this together, and we need to remember that. And remember that we shouldn't be so polarized. Again, have the debate discussions, but vote, but then come together as Americans.
Yeah, even having that open mind and knowing that you have an opinion, and so does your neighbor, and so does your family member, and that's okay.
You should hear my wife and I discuss public policy issues. It's a real hoot, but it's all in good fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, so much great information today. Thank you so much. Pasco County Supervisor of Elections, Brian Corley. Great to see you.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next time. I'm your host, Tambrey Laine.